Madam Attorney General, there are many programs you have functioning at the local level, certainly in Baltimore. We have a top-notch U.S. Attorney's Office, an outstanding Baltimore FBI field office, joint task forces working with local government, going against everything, dealing with everything from human trafficking, such a vile and despicable thing, to Medicare fraud, which we know, for example, in Florida, is already to $3 billion, defrauding our government of money that should be in the trust fund helping sick people. So we thank you for what you're doing. The issue, though, is also focusing on criminal justice reform. Because of our grant program, particularly in COPS, Burn, others, they go directly to local law enforcement. Do you think that there should be mandatory training in the areas of ethnic and racial bias, as well as also on the use of force, and that there should be a national standard? In other words, in order to get the money, you have to take the training that behavior will not tatter or wear out or even break the trust that the community must feel.
Senator, I think as we administer our grant programs to our local law enforcement partners, all of those issues are on the table and are under consideration. Currently, I will say that our view is that we feel that the grant program is a very important tool in bringing offices into compliance with not only federal standards, but community standards that they are aware of also. So we would not use that as a barrier to the grant program, but rather as an incentive to work with us and gain training on use of force policies. We have grants that are specifically targeted towards that through the COPS office. Whether there's a collaborative reform effort or not, but through the COPS office, we provide specific training on best practices involving use of force. Not only do we provide the training, we also attempt to link local law enforcement with other local law enforcement offices that themselves have either received training from COPS.
But Madam Attorney General, we'll get lost into collaborative reform and all this, and I don't mean lost. First of all, we do know that Baltimore City, through its both mayor and police commissioner and the concurrence of other elected officials, have initiated a collaborative reform effort in Baltimore. That is a voluntary effort where police departments reach out to you, meaning the Attorney General and his or her offices, to evaluate the department on how to better improve police community relations, law enforcement. That is underway, but that's voluntary.
Yes.
That's voluntary. Then, of course, there's the pattern and practice investigation. We know we've asked for that. You'll make your determination whether later on whether you'll initiate it. But what about where they haven't asked for collaborative reform, but they have asked for money? Yeah. There's a lot of let's get the money, and we supported more cops on the beat. Mm-hmm. We supported the burn grant so that our law enforcement would have the tools that they needed, whether it's other technology or whatever. Then, but again, they took the money, but we see that there are other issues that community-based leaders, faith and grassroots and others, are saying the relationship is worn. And my question is, if you get the money, should there be training, whether it's latent bias, deliberate bias, and also the use of force?
Yes, Senator, and
so
I certainly agree with...
Do you think that, apart from whether they have a collaborative reform effort underway or not?
Yes, Senator, separate and apart from whether there's a collaborative reform effort, in a pure grant situation, we do seek to provide training. My only point was that, and I actually don't want to disagree with you on that because it is such an important point. My only point was we don't use that as a barrier to obtaining the grant, but rather as an incentive to work with us and obtain training from a variety of different sources. Some of that training will come as a result of the grants. Some of the training comes as a result of us connecting police departments with others.
I understand that, but the community feels they get a lot of money from the feds, and we don't have the necessary standards. So I'd like to have an ongoing conversation with you about it.
And those issues are under consideration because, as you indicate, they're very, very important and essential to the
What other
discussion.
tools do you feel that you have on criminal justice reform to help restore this trust that exists, that we need to restore in our communities?
Well, Senator, we have touched a little bit on the collaborative reform process, but again, as we have seen, without community trust in that, it may not be as effective as we would wish. Certainly, we then have other tools to consider. Within our programs, we do provide training on use of force. We do provide training on building community trust. We also, as you've mentioned earlier in your statement, through our Community Relations Service, work directly with the community to attempt to empower them to engage with their local leaders, with the police department, and to hold them accountable as well, because we do think that community accountability is an important part of that relationship.
Well, we have more to ask. If there's a second round, I want to focus then on juvenile justice.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, I know the hour is late. I just have a few comments for ongoing efforts. First of all, I'm going to associate myself with the remarks of Senator Leahy, the gentleman from Vermont, about the need for reviewing sentencing reform. But the prison population, you know, your appropriations request for prisons is $7 billion. It's a significant amount of money because it constitutes almost 1/3 of your appropriations. I would hope, because there is bipartisan effort in this area, in terms of looking at what we need to do to safely reduce the prison population. We have an excellent facility in Maryland and Cumberland, but our concerns would be the public safety for the public. Second, and not in parallel, safety for the correction officers, because you've got significant challenges in the prison with overcrowding, and I worry about their safety. And then third, what are the issues where prisoners who are either really old or really sick, in other words, how can we begin to do an evaluation of who's in prison and should they be in prison? And Madam Attorney General, I would hope as you begin your term here that you look also at those of a significant age or significantly ill where they would pose no threat to the general public. So let's have an ongoing conversation about it and look forward to your recommendations. Heroin, it has come up just about from all of us on both sides of the aisle. My governor, a Republican governor, a 90% congressional, Democratic congressional delegation, we're Team Maryland and wanting to deal with this. So we ask that your task force, which I initiated when I was chair in the support of Senator Shelby, is that it not only be an internal to the Justice Department, but it be across the board involving the Department of Education, the Department of Human Services, the Department of Homeland Security. Is that the nature of the task force, or is it internal to the Justice Department?
Senator, the task force had its first meeting last week, and I haven't been fully briefed on that, but I will confirm the level of participation to you. Even if it is, however, focused on the Department of Justice, that does not preclude us from, as you noted, reaching across the street to those agencies and pulling them into the debate.
We think this is a big issue. It is a big issue in our state. The third point that I'm going to make is juvenile justice. There are several grant programs here in the area of juvenile justice. I would hope in the days ahead we could work with your department on what you feel would have, as we work with our mayor and our community-based groups, what would be the effective juvenile justice programs that we could either bring additional resources in or appeal for or apply for these grants. I know, speaking for the delegation and speaking for the leadership of our city, not only government, but our private sector, as well as our community-based, faith-based leaders, we see this as a situation in which there could be an opportunity to really do something very dramatic, very significant in terms of our young people, so that for those that are on track, we help them stay there. For those who need to get back on track, help them get there. And for those who really constitute significant risk to our community, we also do the right intervention. So we look forward to ongoing conversation. You're always welcome back in our hometown, but we also appreciate the availability and the accessibility and the professionalism of your staff.
Thank you, ma'am.